You ever wake up to the kind of morning that just feels off? Like the universe picked you for its little experiment in patience. That was me staring out my kitchen window at 6:30 sharp, watching the wind slam my barn doors and like clockwork, seeing Karen's shiny silver SUV smack in the center of my barn, again blocking my tractor, my hay bales, and honestly most of my sanity. But you know what made my blood boil? It wasn't just the parking. It was Karen herself, standing on my hood in a leopard print bathrobe, shrieking into her phone on speaker about how she'd claimed my barn as some sort of community parking lot, like she was a settler out here staking a flag. Meanwhile, my cattle were huddled outside in the rain because I couldn't even close the doors. That was the day I snapped. I mean, really snapped. Karen was in the middle of what looked like a one-woman HOA tryout, yelling at anyone who'd listen. And here I am wading into the storm boots on rain soaking through my jacket, ready to reclaim a little piece of dignity. "Karen, what in the blue hell do you think you're doing?" I hollered. She barely turned, just waved at me like I was the guest, like I was the one out of place. She shouted back that my barn had plenty of room and my tractor could wait its turn, as if my life's work could sit idle for her morning latte run. When I told her for maybe the 100th time it was private property, she just laughed and called me dramatic, perched on my hood like a queen on a throne she'd stolen. My neighbors were out too, peeking over fences, phones in hand, ready to catch the next episode of Karen's wild adventures. It was a circus. I tried to be reasonable, told her one last time she needed to stop. She gasped, all offended, then told me if I didn't have so much farm junk, there'd be room for civilized people. You ever feel so angry your nails cut half moons into your palm? That was me biting back every word I wanted to say. I walked away before I did something stupid, but that morning planted a seed. After she finally strutted off, leaving mud and coffee cups as her calling card, my chores were ruined. Hay-soaked, cattle, miserable hours lost to her mess. I ended up calling my buddy Hank my go-to when I need either wisdom or a nudge toward the crazy side. Hank listened, then told me straight, "Man, you're overdue for sainthood. You need to teach that woman a lesson she'll never forget." I knew he was right. Reasoning with Karen was like shouting at the rain. That evening, I saw her circling again, slow-rolling her SUV like a vulture, and that's when it hit me. I'd spent all this time playing defense, trying to keep her out, when what I needed to do was make her never want to come back. I walked the barn that night, touching every muddy print, every scratch she'd left, feeling my sanctuary turning into a parking lot. I swore right then I'd take my peace back permanently. Didn't sleep a wink. By dawn, a plan was brewing. Not just to chase her off, but to lock those barn doors, pocket the key, and disappear into the mountains if I had to let her stew on the wrong side of the gate for once. The next morning, every barn door got a heavy-duty padlock, the kind even Big Mike at the hardware store said was a lesson with teeth. Mike grizzled as he has laughed so hard I thought he'd choke when I told him why. Turns out Karen had blocked his deliveries more than once. "Only way she learns is the hard way," he said. That stuck with me. The real turning point. That weekend, Karen brought friends 2 SUVs, music blasting, snacks in tow, ready to turn my barn into their private event space. When I confronted her, she just smirked, told her friends, "See, he thinks he owns the neighborhood." They all laughed like I was some cartoon villain. I stood in the doorway, refusing to let them in, but Karen waltzed past, claiming I couldn't stop community events. "It's literally illegal." Yeah, that happened. They left my barn trashed, my equipment scratched, my patience gone. Hank called it, "She's running a rodeo in there next time if you let her slide." I decided there wouldn't be a next time. The locks went on, reinforced the whole place, fixed every weak spot I could find. As the sun set, I stood back, felt something like hope for the first time in days. Let her come. I was ready. And sure enough, late one afternoon, the familiar crunch of her tires on gravel set my teeth on edge. But now I was calm, waiting. She saw the new locks and lost it, yelling that I couldn't lock her out, ranting about HOA rights and changing laws. but I just watched her arms crossed, waiting for her to run out of steam. She tried the pity angle, claimed her driveway was full, called me heartless. I told her flat, never again. No more parking, no more trespassing, no more excuses. She spat threats, revved off, promising hell would come my way. That night I paid Big Mike a visit, figured if anyone knew how to send a message, it was him. He told me about the time he chained a neighbor's trailer for a week after too many borrows. We laughed, but the idea stuck. The next time Karen parked in my barn, I wouldn't say a word. I'd just lock those doors, take the key, and disappear. Let her Stu call the sheriff, make a scene. The law was finally on my side, and so was half the neighborhood, and it played out just like I'd hoped. One morning, Karen stormed in again, music blaring, strutting around as if the barn was her garage. I waited until she was bragging on the phone, then shut those doors, snapped on the locks, and walked away. She pounded, screamed, threatened lawsuits and police. I tipped my hat and drove off to the mountains, spent the next 2 days fishing and finally breathing free. Hank sent me a picture from the sheriff Karen outside the barn, hair-wild neighbors recording her meltdown, the cops telling her plain as day she was the trespasser. When I got back, the silver SUV was still trapped and word had spread. Mike and I built a fence so solid not even Karen's ego could get through it. Hank joined in, neighbors cheered, and Karen showed up in a rage, shrieking threats, snapping photos, swearing this wasn't over. The sheriff arrived, told her to clear off or spend the night in jail, and for the first time she actually backed down, face-pale, voice shaking. I stood there leaning on my new gate as dusk settled, barn secure, the fence gleaming in the sunset, neighbors clapping my back. Karen's SUV still locked in a trophy to her own arrogance. I figured she'd try one more time, and sure enough, a week later, a letter showed up threatening lawsuits, claiming I'd illegally detained her property. My lawyer laughed, said, "Let her file, we'll bury her with evidence." And bury her we did. In court, Karen arrived like she was walking a red carpet, all attitude and sunglasses. But her lawyer's story fell apart fast. Photos, videos, repair bills, witness statements, all the proof she'd ever need to realize she'd lost. And then the twist, a neighbor produced texts showing Karen had actually been charging people to park in my barn, renting out my land for cash. The judge's face went dark. Karen was hit with damages, fines, and a restraining order barred from my property forever. She stormed out muttering threats nobody believed. When Karen failed to pay the fines or claim her car, the judge signed off and that SUV was mine to auction. The whole town turned out to watch. Mike bought it, had it painted bright orange with private property in black letters, and parked it by his fence as a warning to trespassers everywhere. Funny thing, after all that peace finally returned, Karen moved away. Her reputation shot the HOA group strangely quiet. Folks still come by, snap photos of the legendary SUV, ask about the story. Hank likes to call it the greatest reverse heist in town history. And honestly, I don't mind. Every version ends the same, the fence standing tall, my land finally my own, and a once unstoppable bully learning once and for all you don't mess with a man on his own ground. Now you tell me, was I right to stand my ground or did I go too far? I'd love to hear how you'd have handled Karen, so drop a comment below. Where's the line between patience and letting yourself get walked on? Maybe this whole wild mess is just a reminder. Sometimes you have to build your own peace one fence post at a time.